Thanks for taking time to check out my book and visit my virtual booth. So why should you read this book? I would answer that to understand today's educational challenges for African Americans, we need to understand where segregation left Black students. Many desegregation books focus on responses to Brown versus Board of Education. Not until 1968-1970 did the Supreme Court end side-by-side white and black schools. Much more important changes came after those cases. I focus on those changes. I believe my book is also the only in-depth account of school desegregation in Florida. It has been documented according to standards for legal and academic scholarship. The book tells not just what happened, but why it happened the way it did. What is the main story? First, we need to understand why Southern schools were desegregated. The separate Black schools were far from equal to the white schools. However, those schools had strong Black community support. Should the Black schools be equalized or desegregated? The NAACP leadership rejected suing county by county to equalize the Black schools. As a practical matter, equality would be a moving target. Chapter 4 explains why the NAACP turned to desegregation. This discussion is especially relevant today. Many believe that desegregation failed to level the educational playing field for Blacks. Brown was decided in 1954. In a second opinion in 1955, the Supreme Court ordered a transition to a racially non-discriminatory school system. I cover the reaction to Brown in Florida. Almost all of our politicians, including Leroy Collins, opposed desegregation, but our Florida leaders also advocated compliance with the law. What was a racially non-discriminatory school system? In all the pages of decisions in Brown, those 4 words are the only guidance the Supreme Court gave school boards. At first, a school board only had to allow African Americans to attend white schools. Southern school boards continued operating their Black schools despite their known shortcomings. Across the South and in Florida, only small numbers of Blacks chose to go to the white schools. I was editor of the Gainesville High School newspaper in 1962. The Alachua County schools were still segregated. As part of a student body survey, we asked whether the student favored desegregating Gainesville High School. That we were allowed to include the question suggests that the administration also wanted to know the answer. The response came back 38% yes, 62% no. We did not publish the result. We did show there was a core of white student support for desegregation. The NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund saw that freedom of choice was not working. In 1964, the fund brought suit to desegregate the schools in Alachua County. The lawyers asked the federal court to order a unitary school system for Alachua County. In accordance with existing precedents at that time, the court ordered freedom of choice. In Alachua County, freedom of choice desegregation came off peacefully. I cover freedom of choice in my book. By September 1969, 1/3 of Black secondary students in Gainesville had enrolled in white schools. However, Black students were expected to conform to the white school's norms. In 1968 and 1969, the Supreme Court granted hearings on the NAACP Legal Defense Fund's motions to end freedom of choice. The Supreme Court at last ordered school districts to combine their side-by-side white and Black schools into single unitary systems. From Florida, only cases from Alachua and Bay counties reached the Supreme Court. In January 1970, on motion of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, the Supreme Court ordered Alachua County to desegregate in the middle of a school year. In response, Lincoln High School, Gainesville's black high school, was closed at mid-year. The 2/3 of black students who had hoped to save Lincoln were less willing to adapt to the white schools. I'm going to do that sentence again. The 2/3 of black students who had hoped to save Lincoln were less willing to adapt to the white schools. Many were also unprepared to succeed academically. As my book explains, serious educational and social challenges followed. In Florida, all but a handful of black high schools were closed or repurposed. Violence flared in many cities, including Gainesville. School desegregation divided African Americans. Some older African Americans believed that school desegregation destroyed their traditional, close-knit communities. During desegregation, many Alachua County citizens of both races showed empathy and courage in pursuit of a shared ideal. There is also much evidence that a history of what we now call systemic racism left the actors unprepared for the challenges they faced. Freedom of choice led both races and many leaders to believe that separate white and black schools would continue indefinitely in the South. Colleges of education and other institutions did not respond. Above all, after the courts decided, the entire community had to work together to save the public schools. The people made this history. Today, for many black students, the educational issues their parents or grandparents faced have not been resolved. Evolved teaching techniques from the black schools remain relevant today. What makes my book different? I graduated from Gainesville High School in 1962, from Columbia in 1966, and from Harvard Law School in 1969. I have firsthand knowledge of our community and its schools. Many other authors miss much of the story because they fail to tie desegregation on the ground to court-imposed standards. As a lawyer, I hope this linkage is explained for the benefit of any general reader. Many other books about school desegregation focus on just one aspect. They might cover government responses, the litigation, or the parents and the children. Reading these books is like the proverbial blind man and the elephant. The reader sees the trunk or the tail or a leg, but not the animal itself. Some other authors seek to argue one side, selecting only facts that support their argument. Preparing a case for trial, I had to discover all relevant facts. As a reader seeking to understand this very fraught subject, I believe you are entitled to an intellectually thorough and intellectually honest presentation. I enjoyed very broad community support for my work. I believe I would betray that trust if I inserted my opinions into this history. In all honesty, many of the issues are so complex that I have not formed opinions of my own. You should hear directly from the people who made this history. You should form your own conclusions. These books were some of my models. If you have not already read them, please give them a try. For more information, please go to my book's website. Contact information is included. Thanks for visiting.